My book is dead! Sometimes when I tell people that my book is dead, they like laugh a little uncomfortably and say, oh, I'm sure it will sell eventually. But when I say my book is dead, I mean that we have exhausted its life cycle. It's done. It's been pulled. It's not going to any other editors. And today I wanted to talk a little bit more about what that means and what happens from here. We don't get to talk a lot about what happens during the sub process because kind of by its nature, you don't want to be out in the world being like, hey editors who still have my book, look, no one else wants it. But now that it's dead, I can talk about how no one else wanted it, which I'm actually really excited to do because I'm very excited about what happens next. When you go on submission, meaning you have an agent, you guys have worked on your book together if your agent is editorial like mine is, and then you send it out to editors. Hopefully you start getting really positive feedback. The book moves on to acquisitions and then the publishing house buys the book from you. However, most of the time that doesn't happen. It sucks. It's really hard. You have to kind of like grieve this thing that you were hoping you were so close to, but it turns out you're not. I only sound as chipper as I do because it's been a while. I've had time to come to terms with the fact that this was probably going to happen. Once you have gone on submission, what happens is you come to some sort of an agreement with your agent about how frequently you want to hear what's going on with your book. Some people like to know every little thing. They want to know every rejection, every time the book gets positive feedback, what exactly the negative feedback is. And some people don't want to know anything unless the book has sold. I prefer something in the middle. So the way my agent and I have figured it out is once we go on sub, if I'm curious, I email and I say, hey, how are things going? Have we gotten any useful feedback? From there, I trust my agent's judgment. I don't personally feel like I need to know the really intense criticisms, and I trust Jess to tell me the gist of things. I don't need to hear word for word that an editor hated my book. I just need to know that they thought the plot was a little confusing. So when we went out on the first round of submissions, we got a lot of positive feedback right from the start. A lot of people who seemed really interested, but then rejections started trickling in, people saying that the character just wasn't for them. So we decided to wait it out until we had heard back from the rest of the editors in that wave of submissions. It was about 12 editors. By the end, all of the editors who read it had passed because they felt like the character wasn't good for them. They had a hard time relating to her until close to the end of the book. So we decided to edit it just a little bit. We added a prologue, we tweaked the beginning some, in hopes that it would make the character's motivations more obvious right from the beginning. Thus she would be more sympathetic even though she was still doing super anti-hero things. And then we went out on a second wave of submissions. This means that my agent compiled a new list of 10 to 12 editors who she thought would still be really good fits for my book. We go out to them. I wait for a bit, email Jess. We're getting better feedback this time. A lot of, I really like this, but I don't have a place for it. The writing is really good, send me the next thing. Which is promising. It's still not the answer you want, but it feels a little better than some of the more outright rejections, but it still stings because it feels like you're that much closer and you still aren't there. And so we were out on the second round of submissions, probably for another half a year, maybe a little bit more. We're winding down on hearing from people, and I'm personally starting to feel ready to move on to the next thing, which was good, because I had been working on the next thing the whole time. So I emailed my agent and asked what she was thinking about it all, and mentioned that I was maybe feeling a little bit like it would be time to move on. Fortunately, my agent and I are a great match for each other. She was thinking the exact same thing, so we decided together to pull the book and not send it on a third round of submissions. We wanted to keep the option of recycling a lot of those things in the future at a time when the market would be better for that character and that story. So we didn't want to exhaust every editor who could possibly have been a good fit, because we wanted the option to maybe submit it to them again in the future after a different book has sold. Shortly after the first round of submissions, I had emailed Jess 3 ideas that I had for my next project. There were 3 ideas that I was passionate about at the time that I would have been very excited to work on. And then she picked the one that she liked the best and that she thought would have the most chance of success in the current market. And so from that point on, I started working on that book. I wasn't quite finished with it when we decided to pull my first book from sub. And so it was this great overwhelming feeling of, oh, this is all on me again to keep my career moving forward. I know a lot of people, they get very frustrated by the submissions process because it's so out of your hands, but I actually really like that because it's out of my hands. I've done all the work that I can, and now I can just keep my head down and get excited about this idea and let it run away from me and chase after it for a bit. And I don't have to feel like every little step I'm taking is leading me either closer or farther away from my career goals. It's probably part of why I choose not to have Jess email me every time I get a rejection or every time something good happens, because I like being able to just not think about it. I'm very good at not thinking about it. And so having to think about it again and feeling like every day that I didn't write, I was postponing my career goals is very overwhelming, and it made it really difficult to write the book because there's this added pressure of, well, what if this one doesn't sell? What if I don't have it ready at the peak time to go out on submission? What if my agent hates it? Like, that's something that you have to start thinking about. Like, what if I write this book and it's not what she thought it was when I pitched it to her? And all of these things could be solved with a simple email or a simple phone call. But even after that helps kind of settle all of your nerves, there still is that teeny tiny voice that's like, well, it didn't work last time, which I say as cheerfully as possible because what is the other option, you know? So once we pulled my first book, officially declared it dead, I had a phone call with my agent and we talked about what we were gonna do from here. I showed her where I was with my current book, sent her a synopsis of it, and we talked through the plot points a little bit, talked over what the deadlines were gonna be, when we would want to try and get it out on submission, and from there I put my head back down and got back to work, and I've been working on it ever since. It's probably been the hardest book for me to write. The book that got me my agent kind of poured out of me in a way that other books have not as easily poured out of me. And so it felt very easy to look at that book and be like, oh, this was the book of my heart, because it was easy to write. It was easy to revise. And so then trying to start a different book that didn't come as easily, it was easy to feel like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, I love the idea. I love the characters. I've never not loved the world and the characters, but it really sucks looking at an idea that is not coming easily and trying to figure out what about it isn't working when the last idea was so easy. The last idea, it didn't have anything riding on it. It felt like, well, I can just write this book. It's gonna be the third one I've ever queried, and if it doesn't get me an agent, then I'll just write another one, and no one will care that I'm not succeeding except for me. I can keep working hard and I will get there. Writing a second book after your first book doesn't sell, you're suddenly hyper aware of the fact that someone is counting on you to write that book. Like, my agent doesn't make any money unless we sell this book. And I know I'm rambling and all over the place, but that's how a book being pulled from sub feels. It feels very rambly. It feels very like, what is happening here? It feels very, what in the world am I going to do next? But that's the thing about writing, if you're really serious about being traditionally published, is there's a really high chance your first book isn't gonna sell, and I hope that it does. I would love it if all of us could just sell the first book easily, not just for selfish reasons, but because I know how important writing is to those of us who make/watch these videos. And so I want that excitement. I want that success for me and for all of you. And if you're watching this and you're going through submissions or you are anticipating going through it someday, just know that you're not alone if this is happening to you. It is so normal. It's more common than you think it is. Most of those people whose book deals you're seeing have also had books die on sub. The important thing is that you keep writing the next book. You push through it even though it doesn't feel like the book of your heart anymore, because, I don't know, because it doesn't have to be an important book. Having to fight through it and feeling like it's not the book of your heart just means it's the book of your blood, sweat, and tears. Not every book from here on out is gonna be a blood, sweat, and tears book. There will be another book of the heart, and there are places for both of those books with your name on them on the shelves at bookstores. I know that from talking to other writers who have gotten through the book not selling and gotten to the part where the book does sell. And I have to believe that if those people can do it, that we can as well. I've got my next book. I'm working through the final revisions, and hopefully we're gonna be going out on my next round of subs with it soon. And then I can breathe again because I will have done my part. If you are going through similar things and struggling, please reach out to me. I would love to be your sub buddy. We can get a commiseration group together, because while we can't commiserate overtly online while we're on submission, we can commiserate in each other's inboxes. I've put the ways you can find me down in the description box. If you'd like to share your submissions experiences down in the comments and feel like you are able to, I would love that so much. And I'm sure people who are preparing for that or going through the same thing would also love it. Thank you so much for watching today, Word Nerds. Be sure to tune in this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our usual live chat. I cannot wait to see you all then, and until then, stay nerdy.